I was using Easy Tatting as my kind of first guide to what I was doing. And this is the little ring that's in Easy Tatting. I want to kind of show you my progression, just so you know that I'm still on a learning curve as well. Here was my very, very first one, which I was thrilled with. I loved everything that was going on. The only thing that happened is I had a little too much enthusiasm, and I cut it off of the thread before it was actually attached into a finished circle, which was fine. You know what? I learned how to pull all my little rings together. Now, the next one I did remember that I needed to join it, but I didn't quite read the instructions correctly. And so when I joined my little ring together, I ended up with kind of a twist in it. And the instructions explain how not to do that, but I just didn't quite get it. Probably was a patience thing again. Anyway, so I had a little bit of a twist. But the good news was I was happier with my rings. They were a little more sturdy, a little more even. My picots were a little more even. Good practice. Finally, I ended up with one that I was quite happy with. Okay, I managed to get it joined. It's actually a ring. The picots look good. Everything's done. What I'm going to teach you today is what's called a chain. Okay, if you look at the first project in the ring, each one of the rings is joined on the side with picots. Okay, but at the bottom you'll notice there's just a thread that kind of loops and gives enough room between the first ring and the next ring to kind of let it flow around in a circle. Okay, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's a design element to just use a thread. But most of the tatting patterns have you make that connection with what's called a chain. Okay, it's essentially a strand of your double knots not pulled into a circle. Here's the trick. When you have a ring and a chain, they cannot be made with the same thread. One thread source has to make the ring, and one thread source has to make the chain. That means you are either working with two shuttles. Don't panic on me. You're gonna be fine, I promise. Two shuttles sounds freaky, I understand that, but it means that one shuttle is making the chain and one shuttle is making the ring. There is another way you can do this, which is to have the thread for the rings in a shuttle and have the thread for the chain coming off directly off of a ball of thread, or maybe a small ball of thread. I tried this, and my problem was I had difficulty keeping the tension. It involved wrapping the thread like around my pinkies, and I just couldn't get the tension right, and everything was a little sloppy. What I found, which is probably the ultimate in laziness when it comes to doing the chains, but I'm telling you, this works for me. I found that just the hanging weight of the shuttle, because when you're making a ring, you take it and you wrap it all the way around your hand, and you're working in and out here, okay? When you're making a chain, you don't wrap it, okay? You just use the straight thread that's hanging over your hands, which explains why I was having so much trouble with my tension. And so what I loved about it is I could just kind of let the weight of the thread and the shuttle, see, look at that, it just keeps the tension. I don't have to wrap anything around my pinkies, I don't have to mess around, and that way when I'm actually working the chain, I'm not having to do that extra step. So in some books you're going to read, the instructions will say ball and shuttle. Well, it just basically means two thread sources, and you can choose if you want two shuttles or a ball and a shuttle. It's as simple as that. Anyway, if you continue on with Easy Tatting, you're going to move along, a couple little more projects you can do, and then you're going to get to part 2, which is easy chains. And that's when you'll start to see how, here's a perfect example. You've got a ring, and then a chain, and a ring, and a chain, and a ring, and a chain. Here's something you need to understand. In tatting, it's kind of like when you're knitting in the round, you're only going in one direction, okay? When you're tatting, as you make your double stitches, okay, it moves along kind of like this, in sort of an arc, okay? And then that's why when you pull that arc together, you end up with a loop. The loop doesn't pull in this direction. It can't do that. It always is going to pull in one direction. What that means is that if you're making something that has a loop, and then it has a chain that's going like this, and then another loop, you're going to do what's called reversing your work. You're going to have to turn your work kind of upside down. You're going to make a loop, pull it together, probably has a couple pretty little picots on it. Then all you have to do is literally take the thread from one ring to the next ring to kind of give you an idea of what it looked like when it was just the thread, okay? And you're working in this direction. You have this loop, and then this loop, and then this loop, okay? Moving along in this way. If I wanted to put a chain between these first two rings, I would need to turn my work upside down. It's literally turning it upside down, and then putting a chain in between, and then turning the work back up to do the ring. So here's an example where I have done a ring and then a chain in between and a ring. I'm using two colors to kind of show you what I'm doing, but it's also kind of fun because you can use two colors when you're actually making a project. So if you look at this, remember what I've done. Pretend like nothing else is going on, okay? All I've done right now is I pulled that ring closed. We've done that over and over again, okay? Then all you're going to do is you're going to take that and you're going to flip it upside down, so you're holding it upside down. Remember what I told you about how I can just let this shuttle hang? Now what I'm going to do is this green thread is going to be the chain thread. When you're doing a whole ring, you've wrapped this around all of your fingers and you're working with this thread. The only difference is this time, still thread, still between the same fingers, still the same action, but there's no loop, okay? So it's hanging, love it, nice weight, and all you do is like we did before, you go under, you go in and out, you're making your double, see, you just pull it right up close to that chain again, and you do above and below, and you pull it, okay, just like before, okay, and you keep doing that. One, I think I'll only do like just a few just so we can get this going for you. So remember, you want it to pop there, see, so it's sliding along that strand, okay, so then that's two, both half hitches, and then let's do a third one just to quickly show you. See, same thing, it's just that it's a flat straight line, it's not a ring, okay? So let's say that was all of that, okay? So I've done a chain, a ring, a chain, okay? So I've got it like this, I've been working it, I'm going to turn it upside down. Now I use the ring, and I do it just like I was doing the ring before, okay? With it wrapped around my fingers, I take it up really close to the end of that chain, and I go through the motions to make myself another ring. Now this is something that I want to make sure you understand, because it took me a while to get it, particularly when you're using more than one color. This hand is doing all the motion, and so it's really easy to think that this is the hand that's making the knot that shows, and it's not. So if I'm making a chain, see it's hanging down here, that's where the weight is. Let's just pretend like I haven't made a complete mess of this. By the way it flips over, the green is what's going to actually make what you see. Remember, the other one is just the core that's the knots are sliding around, and it was hard for me to remember what was making the color, okay? You need to just kind of remember that What's in your hand and left hand is what's actually making the knots. What's in your right hand is just the core, the middle. Okay, what I want you to do is just kind of practice making chains, practice flipping back and forth. The other thing that I found with the chains is when I'm ready to make the flip to start a ring, I find it better if I really mush those chain stitches together, because I find that by the time I flip things over and kind of get my act together again, this way I don't have any gaps in between my chain stitches. So I've turned it over, mushed it together a whole lot, and now I'm going to start another ring. Okay? So it's not that hard to use 2 shuttles or a ball and shuttle. See, and I'm pulling it right up next to that chain. It's really not. And now what you have is you know how to make your double stitches, okay, the 2 stitches that make each stitch when you're doing your tatting. You know how to make a picot. You know how to make a chain. And you know how the element that you have to reverse your work in order to keep everything moving in the right direction. To make your chains kind of arch in the right direction, you have to reverse, okay? And what you want to do is just take your time, pick out a couple of projects that look fun to you. I'm going to give you an idea. I've been going a little crazy with the tatting. I've been having fun with projects and all kinds of things I'm going to tell you in the next video that you can do. But keep it simple and don't worry about it. Honestly, the amount of stuff I cut off and just threw away was ridiculous. And it became kind of humbling there for a while, and then it suddenly clicked, and now I am an extremely happy tatter. And I don't know if I mentioned this to you before, but the other thing I like about tatting is it seems like the opposite hand movements of my knitting. So I'm finding that there are evenings when I will knit for a little while, which is holding my knitting needles, and then I will tap for a little while, which is, if you think about it, opening your hand and moving the shuttle back and forth and opening your hand and closing it. And they're opposite. I think they're very complementary to each other in terms of exercising your hand muscles and keeping from getting your hands too tired. Okay, so come back and we'll talk about some fun tatting projects to get started.